When my mother-in-law brought the heavy wooden rolling pin down on my left shin for the third time, I heard the sharp, sickening crunch of bone shattering. A fierce agony surged through my entire body like an electric current. I collapsed onto the cold tile floor. Tears blurred my vision. The glaring kitchen pendant lights illuminated the aged face of my mother-in-law, Barbara, contorted with rage, and beside her stood my father-in-law, Richard, arms crossed, staring down at me with chilling apathy. "Are you talking back to me, you little bitch? Criticizing the food I made for being too salty?" Barbara gasped for breath, the rolling pin still raised in the air. "You married into the Miller family, you follow our rules. Do you still think you're some hotshot Ivy League grad? You useless, barren incubator." I curled into a ball. My left leg bent at a grotesque angle. Every breath brought a new wave of excruciating pain. I tried to crawl toward the doorway, but my fingers scraped uselessly against the tile. "Jason! Jason!" I called out my husband's name faintly, pouring my last ounce of hope into it. Footsteps echoed from the living room. My husband, Jason Miller, the man who had sworn to protect me forever under the giant oak tree on our college quad 3 years ago, slowly walked toward the kitchen doorway. He looked down at me. His eyes held no pity, only intense irritation. "What's going on now?" he asked, furrowing his brow. His gaze clearly landed on my deformed leg, but his expression didn't change. "Jason, my leg is broken." I gritted my teeth, cold sweat soaking my bangs. "Take me to the hospital, please." Jason crouched down, but not to examine my injury. He reached out, grabbed my chin roughly, and forced my head up to look at him. "Emily, how many times have I told you? Listen to the elders." His voice was terrifyingly calm. "My parents are old. Can't you just accommodate them? Do you always have to provoke them until you're satisfied?" I stared at him in disbelief. I just said the food was a bit salty and bad for his blood pressure. Still talking back. Barbara's rolling pin went up again. Jason raised a hand to stop her, but his next words shoved me into a pit of ice. "Mom, that's enough. Her leg is broken. Maybe she'll finally learn her lesson while she's laid up." He let go of my chin, stood up, and dusted off his hands as if he had touched something filthy. "Let her lie on the floor and think about what she's done. I'll take her to the ER tomorrow." Tomorrow. It was only 8:00 p.m. My leg was already swelling massively, and with every heartbeat, a tearing pain washed over me. "Jason? No. We have to go now. I could be permanently disabled," I begged, grabbing the hem of his jeans. He lightly kicked me off and looked down at me from above. "Don't worry, you won't die. This is your punishment for not listening. Remember it well." With that, he turned, put an arm around his mother's shoulders, and headed back to the living room. "Mom, let it go. The BBQ ribs and wings you love just got delivered. And Dad, I rented that 4K version of the World War II movie you wanted to see." The voices of the family of 3 faded away, soon replaced by the blare of the TV and bursts of laughter. I was left alone, broken on the kitchen floor. Physical agony and a deep, freezing chill in my heart mixed together. I closed my eyes, and the tears finally burst like a broken dam. 3 years ago, I was a top-tier university graduate, the cherished only daughter of my parents. When I met Jason, he was so sweet and attentive, swearing to make me the happiest woman in the world. I believed him, defying my parents' objections to move halfway across the country to the Midwest to marry him. Everything changed after the wedding. My mother-in-law began picking on me over everything. My corporate job was too demanding and neglected the family. My cooking was bland. And even the way I laughed became a reason for her to throw a fit. Jason, who initially comforted me, soon turned to silence, and eventually stood by his parents, blaming me. A year ago, I suffered an unexpected miscarriage. Barbara cursed me out, calling me useless, and my husband began his campaign of cold, emotional abuse. I wanted a divorce, but they had forced me to route my direct deposits into an account they controlled, took my passport, and monitored my phone. I had no way to contact my parents back on the East Coast. My cell phone was currently in my purse in the living room, completely out of reach. The kitchen window faced the empty woods behind our suburban subdivision. Even if I screamed for my life, no neighbors would hear me. As every minute and second ticked by, the sharp pain began to dull into numbness, and my consciousness faded. I listened to the sounds of them eating in the living room, the gunfire from the TV, and their occasional laughter. Jason, is she really going to be okay? Richard's voice held a trace of hesitation. Dad, don't go soft. She needs a hard lesson to wake up. Otherwise, she'll just get harder to control, Jason replied casually, as if discussing the weather. My manager at work told me his wife wouldn't listen, so he beat her till she was hospitalized. Now she's as docile as a kitten. You can't coddle women. But her leg is broken, Barbara chimed in. Don't worry, Mom. I looked it up. A broken bone heals if you lay in bed for a few weeks. We'll pay the hospital bill out of my salary. Actually, this is the perfect excuse for her to quit that fancy job and stay home to serve you two. I closed my eyes. My fingernails dug so hard into my palms they drew blood, but it hurt far less than my heart. Their words were the scalpel carving out the last remnants of my lingering affection for this marriage. The night deepened, and they each went to their rooms to sleep. Not a single person came to check on me. I lay on the cold floor, my left leg completely numb. Darkness enveloped me like a seamless net. But just before despair swallowed me whole, a tiny voice echoed in my mind. Emily, are you going to die here? Like a stray dog no one cares about? No, I couldn't. I used my right arm to slowly prop my upper body up. Every inch of movement brought excruciating pain. 2 meters away was the corner of the kitchen pantry. I remembered there was a bottom drawer containing spare, rusty kitchen tools. It took me perhaps an hour, maybe longer, to drag myself to that drawer. When I finally pulled it open, I was near collapse, sweat and tears blurring my vision. A sturdy metal can opener lay there, reflecting the faint moonlight. I didn't use it to hurt anyone that would only bring me bigger problems. Instead, I dragged myself to the small ground-level ventilation window in the pantry. I used the tool to pry out the old nails, keeping it shut. The window was tiny, but I was thin. In the face of survival instincts, pain had to take a back seat. Dragging my broken leg, I squeezed through the frame and fell onto the grass in the backyard. The autumn wind was freezing, but my mind felt clearer than ever. My phone, wallet, and ID were all inside, confiscated by them. I was penniless, nursing a shattered leg, lying in the grass in thin pajamas. But I was free, at least temporarily. I oriented myself and began crawling toward the lights of the nearest neighbor's house. The 50-foot distance felt like a marathon. Rocks and twigs tore at my palms and knees, and my broken leg dragged behind me, leaving a long, winding trail in the frost. Right before I lost consciousness, I reached the neighbor's porch and used my last ounce of strength to bang on the door. An elderly woman, Mrs. Higgins, opened it. Seeing my horrific state, she gasped sharply. Help me. I Luters, Lubin. I forced out the words before my vision went entirely black. But I didn't lose consciousness completely. In the chaos, I felt someone lifting me and heard Mrs. Higgins frantically talking to the 911 dispatcher. I also heard her angry whisper. It's the Miller house again. Those monsters are going to rot in hell. The wail of the ambulance siren drew closer. I was loaded onto a stretcher, and someone covered me with a warm thermal blanket. Under the glaring white lights of the ER, doctors and nurses bustled around me. The X-rays showed my left tibia and fibula were completely shattered. I needed immediate surgery. Where is her family? The attending doctor asked. I weakly shook my head. I don't have any here. I'll sign the consent forms. How did this happen, honey? A female nurse asked, her eyes full of sympathy. I stared at the ceiling and enunciated every single word clearly. My mother-in-law shattered it with a rolling pin. My husband watched me bleed on the floor all night and did nothing. A dead silence fell over the trauma bay. I heard the nurse gasp, and the doctor's brow furrowed deeply. Call the police, the doctor said, his voice suppressing intense anger. No, I stopped the nurse who was reaching for the phone. Not yet. Everyone stared at me. I lay on the gurney, my leg temporarily splinted. The pain dialed back by IV painkillers. But deeper than the physical agony, something was burning inside me. It wasn't despair anymore. It was cold, sharp, and waiting to detonate. Doctor. I looked at my attending. I have a favor to ask. Go ahead. I outlined my plan. At first, the doctor frowned and shook his head. But after hearing all the details, He remained silent for a long time before finally nodding. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? He asked. Yes. I'm sure. My voice was quiet but bizarrely resolute. This was my only chance. When I woke up, I was in a private hospital room. My left leg was elevated, encased in a heavy cast. Morning sunlight sliced through the blinds. As the anesthesia wore off, the pain returned. But clearer than the pain was the blueprint in my head. You're awake, a gentle female voice said. It was the nurse from last night. Her badge read Sarah Jenkins. Nurse Sarah. I kept my voice weak. Thank you. Save your strength. She adjusted my IV drip. Then she lowered her voice. The police came by this morning. I told them you were still unconscious, per your request. I haven't contacted your house yet either. I nodded. Has my husband's family tried to contact the hospital? Not yet, but she hesitated. Are you really not going to file a police report right now? What your mother-in-law did is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Your husband is an accomplice. I know, I interrupted her. My voice was surprisingly calm. But calling the cops is only step one. I don't just want them punished. I want absolute freedom and total justice. Nurse Sarah looked at me with a mix of confusion and profound empathy. She had likely seen countless domestic abuse victims who ultimately returned to their abusers. Here's a phone. She pulled a cheap, prepaid smartphone from her pocket. Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor who saved you, asked me to give this to you. She set it up with a temporary SIM card. She also told me to tell you that she's willing to testify. I took the phone. For 3 years in this unfamiliar city, I had been isolated and monitored by the Millers, stripped of my social circle. To think the one who reached out during my darkest moment was a neighbor I had barely spoken to. Mrs. Higgins said. Sarah added that she's heard yelling and hitting from your house more than once. But whenever she threatened to call the cops in the past, your mother-in-law would curse her out off the property. She's been beating herself up for not helping sooner. I shook my head. She saved my life. That's more than enough. After Sarah left, I turned on the phone. The contact list was empty. Relying on memory, I dialed a number I thought I'd never have the courage to call again. It rang 5 times before someone picked up. Hello? My mother's voice, thick with sleep and wary of an unknown number. Mom. The moment the word left my mouth, my throat choked up. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by suppressed sobs. Emily? Emily? Where are you? You haven't called in 6 months. Your father and I have been going crazy. Your in-laws told us you had an affair and ran away. We didn't believe them, but we couldn't find you. Mom, listen to me. I tried to maintain my composure. I was assaulted by Jason and his parents. My leg is broken. I'm in the hospital. What? My mother's voice spiked with sheer terror. Which hospital? Your father and I are getting on the next flight out of Boston. No, don't come yet, I said rapidly. Listen to my plan. I need your help, but you can't show your faces yet. If the Millers know I'm in contact with you, they'll be on guard. But Emily, my surgery is done. I'm not in life-threatening danger. I paused. Mom, I was wrong for the past 3 years. I was wrong to ignore you and move away, and I was wrong to endure it the first time they hit me. But I'm awake now. I'm getting a divorce, and I'm going to make them pay. The other end was silent for a few seconds. Then my father took the phone. His voice was deep, authoritative, the voice of a retired Marine. Emily. It's Dad. Tell me your plan. We are with you 100%. Tears finally spilled from my eyes. For 3 years, blinded by love, I had hurt the people who loved me most. My parents had vehemently opposed this marriage, not because they looked down on Jason's background, but because they saw through his controlling nature, masked by sweetness, and the stubborn cruelty of his parents. Blinded by love, I had even threatened to cut ties with my parents to marry him. I wiped my tears. First, I need a lawyer. The absolute best divorce attorney skilled in domestic violence and asset division. But the Millers cannot know you hired him. Done. One of my old buddies is a top partner in Chicago. I'll have him contact you, my dad said. Second, I need you to gather some documents. My premarital asset records. The bank statements for my salary account that's still in my name, but controlled by them. And most importantly, my medical records from my miscarriage. The records proving Barbara intentionally delayed taking me to the ER, causing my massive hemorrhage. That miscarriage. My father's voice trembled. Those bastards? Did it on purpose? We didn't know. I didn't either at first, I said honestly. But Barbara told me later that since the baby wasn't a true Miller, it was better it died. And Jason didn't say a single word in my defense. I heard my father's muffled curses and my mother's weeping. I continued, "Get an apartment ready for me for when I'm discharged. Keep the location a secret, so they can't find me. Emily, come home. Come back to Boston with us," my mother cried, taking the phone back. "I will. But not yet." I looked at my cast. I have unfinished business here. After hanging up, a strange serenity washed over me. 3 years of fear, grievance, and self-doubt condensed into something hard and unbreakable. I was no longer the Emily who endured everything just to beg for crumbs of affection. A knock came at the door. Dr. Evans walked in. "How are you feeling?" He checked my IV and cast. "Dr. Evans, last night you mentioned I could get a forensic medical evaluation for my fractures?" He paused, then nodded. "Your tibia and fibula were shattered. Even with successful surgery, there's a very high chance of permanent complications affecting your gait. If you want, I can connect you with the forensic medical team." "Please," I said, "but keep the evaluation off the main accessible chart for now. I'll request it when the time is right." Dr. Evans looked at me deeply. "Emily, I understand you want a divorce, but domestic violence cases are notoriously hard to prove, especially when the police weren't called to the scene immediately. Your mother-in-law could claim you fell, and your husband could say he was asleep." I smiled. My smile made Dr. Evans flinch. "That's exactly why I need evidence," I said softly. "Irrefutable, bulletproof evidence." Over the next 3 days, I moved according to plan. Attorney Michael Hayes, contacted by my parents, visited the hospital secretly, and we formulated a detailed strategy. He explained that without new evidence, getting the police to retroactively file felony charges would be an uphill battle. However, in civil court, it would give me immense leverage for a fault-based divorce and asset division. "The key is proof," Hayes said. "I have a way," I told him my plan. Hayes adjusted his glasses after hearing it. "It's highly risky. But if it works, the Miller family will pay an astronomical price." "Are you sure you want to go through with this, Emily? The process will be agonizing. Compared to the last 3 years, it's nothing," I said calmly. At the same time, I asked Nurse Sarah to casually spread a rumor among the families of other patients. "There's a poor woman in room 3045 whose husband beat her and broke her leg, and her in-laws haven't visited her once in 3 days." The rumor sprouted wings. By my second day, people were walking past my room, shooting me looks of profound pity. I knew this pity would soon turn into public outrage against my abusers. On the morning of the 3rd day, Nurse Sarah rushed in, keeping her voice low. "They're here." "Who?" "Your husband and your in-laws. They're downstairs asking for room 3045 right now." She looked tense. "Are you really not going to see them?" "Stick to the plan," I nodded. My heart raced uncontrollably, but my voice was steady. "Move my things to the backup room. And alert Dr. Evans." "Got it." Sarah took a deep breath and quickly gathered my few belongings. Minutes later, I was wheeled into a vacant room at the furthest end of the hall, quiet and hidden. From its doorway, I could see a section of the corridor leading to my old room. I sat in my wheelchair, hiding behind the cracked door, peering out. Familiar figures appeared. Jason took the lead, holding a generic fruit basket, a smirk playing on his lips. Barbara trailed behind him wearing her most expensive silk blouse, her hair perfectly sprayed. Richard walked with his hands behind his back like a building inspector. They stopped at my old room, 3045. Jason knocked. No answer. He pushed the door open, stepped in, and came out seconds later, frowning. "Where is she?" "Probably getting scans," Jason muttered, not caring. "Let's wait." "Wait for what?" "I'll go ask." Barbara's shrill voice grated in the quiet hallway. She marched toward the nurse's station, with an air of absolute entitlement. "Hey, nurse, Where is Emily Miller from 3045? We're her family. Nurse Sarah was on duty. She looked up, her face a mask of professional ice. And who are you? I'm her mother-in-law. Barbara raised her chin. Where did she go? Did she run away? My son graciously took time off to come here, and she has the nerve to be missing? Sarah slowly flipped through her chart. The patient in 3045 was moved to a different wing this morning. Moved? Where? Jason stepped up, a hint of disguised panic in his voice. I cannot disclose that. The patient has requested strict confidentiality. Confidentiality? We're her family. Barbara's voice went up an octave. I'm her mother-in-law, he's her husband. We have the right to know where she is. Their shouting attracted the attention of other patients' families. The people who had heard the rumors began whispering. That's them, the ones who broke their daughter-in-law's leg. They look so normal, but they're monsters. I heard they didn't even show up for 3 days. The whispers weren't loud, but Jason caught them. His face stiffened, but he tried to maintain his polite facade. Nurse, my wife injured her leg and might be mentally unstable. We are very worried about her. Please tell us where she is. Sarah looked him dead in the eye. Mr. Miller, your wife's left tibia and fibula were shattered into pieces, accompanied by severe soft tissue damage and clinical shock. Do you honestly believe those injuries occurred because she is mentally unstable? Jason froze. Barbara either didn't grasp the severity or simply didn't care. She fell because she's clumsy. What does that have to do with us? We came out of the goodness of our hearts, and this is the attitude we get? Bring me your manager. Just then, Dr. Evans stepped out of his office, wearing a crisp white coat, his expression grim. I am Emily's attending physician, Dr. James Evans. You are her family? Yes, I'm her husband. Jason spoke over his mother, trying to do damage control. Doctor, how is my wife? We're sick with worry. Doctor? Evans stared at him in silence for several seconds. The nurse's station was so quiet you could hear the beep of the monitors. Every nurse, patient, and visitor in the vicinity was watching. Then, Dr. Evans spoke. His voice was clear and carried down the hall. Emily discharged herself from this floor this morning and was transferred to the psychiatric trauma ward. Our preliminary diagnosis indicates severe PTSD and clinical depression, likely linked to prolonged domestic abuse. We advised her to contact the police, and we've issued a forensic medical report. According to the report, her fractures were caused by repeated strikes from a blunt, heavy object. The injury pattern is completely inconsistent with a fall. He paused, sweeping his gaze over their 3 suddenly pale faces. Furthermore, when Emily regained consciousness, she repeatedly stated she was terrified to go home. She was terrified she would be beaten again. Therefore, respecting the patient's wishes, we are withholding her location. If you insist on communicating with her, do so through law enforcement or an attorney. Deathly silence. Then Barbara's shrill shriek tore through it. Bullshit! You're making this up. She tripped on purpose to extort money from us. What domestic abuse? That never happened. But this time, no one took her side. The gazes of everyone around them felt like needles filled with contempt and undisguised fury. Jason's face went white, then flushed red, then pale again. He opened his mouth to speak, but under Dr. Evans's calm glare and the whispers of the crowd, not a single word came out. Richard reacted first. He grabbed his wife, hissing under his breath, "Shut up! Do you want to embarrass us more?" He forced a smile at Dr. Evans. "Doctor, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Emily, she has some mental issues. She's lied like this before. If you just tell us what hospital she's at, we can go clear this up." "I'm sorry. Protecting patient privacy is our legal obligation." Dr. Evans cut him off, leaving no room for argument. "If you have no other business here, please leave so you don't disturb the other patients." He turned and went back into his office, the door clicking shut. The sound was soft, but it felt like a slap across the Millers' faces. Under the pointing fingers of the onlookers, Jason finally broke. He practically dragged his parents away, fleeing toward the elevators. As they passed the room where I was hiding, I saw their expressions clearly through the crack in the door. Barbara was red-faced, muttering curses with trembling lips. Richard looked ashen, his eyes filled with panic, and Jason. The man who ignored my agony 3 days ago now looked utterly terrified. What was he afraid of? That I really went to a psych ward? That I called the cops? Or that the illusion of the perfect family he had meticulously maintained had just imploded in public? The elevator doors closed, taking them away. I sat in my wheelchair and quietly closed the door. Nurse Sarah slipped into my room, her eyes shining. Did you see their faces? Oh my God. That felt so good. I nodded. But in my heart, there wasn't the rush of satisfaction I had anticipated, only a cold, calculating calm. This is just the beginning, I said. My phone buzzed. A text from Attorney Hayes. Evidence acquired. Also, Jason's company HR just reached out to me regarding your situation. It seems they received an anonymous tip about his domestic violence and illegal confinement of his wife. I replied, let the tip marinate a bit longer. After the Millers left, my room returned to peace. But I knew this was the calm before the storm. They wouldn't take this lying down. Especially your mother-in-law, Sarah said worriedly as she poured me water. She was humiliated today. She's going to want payback. I know. That's why we prepare. Right on cue, my phone rang. An unknown local number. I signaled Sarah to be quiet, answered the call, and hit the record button. Emily. Jason's voice. He was suppressing his rage, trying to sound rational. Where are you? Tell me right now. Why does it matter to you where I am? My voice was weak, even a little frail. This was genuine. As the painkillers wore off, the throbbing in my leg was intense. I'm your husband. Why does it matter? His voice flared, then dropped. Emily, stop this. Let's pretend today didn't happen. Let's go home. We need to sit down and talk. Let's go home, I laughed softly. The line went silent. To the house where I was left on the floor with a broken leg? I asked. The house where you guys ate BBQ ribs and watched TV while I screamed in agony? That was an accident, Jason said frantically. Mom didn't mean it. She just lost her temper for a second. And you were in the wrong too. Why did you have to talk back? Couldn't you just let her have her way? There it is again. For 3 years, I was the cause of every conflict. I was too headstrong. I wasn't gentle enough. I didn't know how to appease them. My job was too demanding. And they were always right, always acting for my own good. Jason. I cut him off, my voice sinking like a stone. My left tibia and fibula are shattered. I can't walk for at least 3 months, and I might walk with a limp for the rest of my life. This wasn't an accident. It's aggravated assault. And you are an accomplice. What bullshit are you talking about? He panicked. Accomplice? Emily, I'm warning you. Don't go running your mouth to people. If you dare call the cops or spread rumors, see what I do to you. What are you going to do? I asked back. Beat me again? Or take my phone, my ID, and my paycheck and lock me in the house like before? Heavy breathing came through the phone. Seconds later, his tone shifted. It softened, taking on that fake, sickening sweetness from when we were dating. Emily, don't do this. If we have problems, we can work them out. Did you forget how good we used to be? I swear, this will never happen again. Come home. I'll make Mom apologize to you. Can't we start over? The old me might have caved, but the current me only felt nauseous. Jason, we have nothing left to say. My lawyer will contact you regarding the divorce. The forensic medical report is done. The lawyer advised me to call the police. But whether I do or not depends entirely on your family's attitude. Lawyer? What lawyer? Emily, where did you get the money for a lawyer? My parents paid for him. I knew it. Your parents always looked down on me. They looked down on my family. Now they finally found an excuse to break us up. His voice turned vicious again, the mask of affection instantly ripping away to reveal the controlling monster underneath. This has nothing to do with them. I want this divorce. I'll pay the legal fees out of my own salary. Is there a problem? Oh, right. Your mother has held my debit card for years, giving me a $200 allowance a month while you took my whole paycheck. We'll have to calculate that debt during the divorce, too. You, Jason, was losing it. Emily, You really want to drag this out? I'm telling you, even if I agree to a divorce, you won't get a single red cent. You're my wife. What's yours is mine. Do you think hiding in a hospital will stop me from finding you? I know people in the medical system. Try it then. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking slightly, but I felt exhilarated. For the first time in 3 years, I had overtly rebelled and said everything I had kept bottled up. Nurse Sarah looked at me with concern. Are you okay? What if they really find you here? They won't come anytime soon. I shook my head. Dr. Evans already flagged my file as confidential. Plus, Jason has bigger problems to deal with right now. What problems? I opened the message Attorney Hayes had sent and showed it to Sarah. It contained screenshots from a massive Reddit thread and a local Facebook group. The clickbait title blared, "Corporate manager at tech company beats wife, breaks her leg, leaves her to rot. A true monster." The anonymous poster exposed Jason by name, detailing how he and his parents abused me, financially controlled me, and refused to take me to the hospital after shattering my leg. Attached were blurred photos of me in the hospital bed and sections of my x-rays. The writing was fluent, the details visceral, and it was gaining massive traction. Wow, Sarah's eyes widened. Your lawyer did this? It's anonymous, but everything in it is true. I put the phone down. His company cares heavily about their corporate image. A scandal like this will keep him busy for a while. Sure enough, an hour later, Jason's calls started flooding in. I didn't answer. He sent a barrage of texts, first threatening, then begging, then furious. Emily, you're a vicious bitch. You posted that, didn't you? HR just pulled me into a meeting. Are you happy now? Pick up the phone, let's negotiate. What do you want? How much money? Name your price. You crazy bitch, you'll regret this. I put the phone on silent and ignored the rabid dog. Why show mercy to the enemy? In the afternoon, Dr. Evans did his rounds and brought news. Jason came back to the hospital. He tried to bypass me and went straight to the VP of medicine to get your records and room number. Dr. Evans looked grave. The VP is my old mentor, so I blocked him. But he won't give up easily. Also, your mother-in-law is throwing a tantrum in the main lobby. She's threatening to call the cops on the hospital for illegally kidnapping her daughter-in-law. Let her call them, I said. Dr. Evans paused. You want the police involved now? If the cops come, it's even better, I explained. I can formally file domestic violence charges on the spot. We didn't call them the night it happened, but now they're escalating it. If the police show up, they have to take statements and file a report. That police dispatch record becomes official evidence. Dr. Evans looked at me with a complex expression. Emily, you've changed completely. You used to be. I used to be docile, obedient, always smiling. Even crying inside, I thought endurance would earn respect, that love could change everything. People change, doctor, I said softly, especially when they're pushed to the edge of a cliff. After Dr. Evans left, I asked Sarah to contact Mrs. Higgins. 30 minutes later, the kind elderly woman appeared in my room, holding a thermos of homemade chicken soup. Oh, you poor thing. She touched my hand, her eyes red. I knew from the start those weren't good people. When you first moved in, you were so pretty and sweet. Look how thin you've gotten. Thank you for saving me, Mrs. Higgins. I squeezed her hand. But could I ask you for one more favor? Anything, sweetheart. Whatever you need. The Millers might come bothering you about that night. If the police come asking, please tell them exactly what you heard and saw. The yelling, the hitting, me crawling across the lawn. But if the Millers come to you, pretend you know nothing. Tell them you went to bed early and didn't hear a thing. Mrs. Higgins was confused. Why? I saw it all. I want to testify for you. Not yet, I explained patiently. I want them to run wild first. The higher they jump, the harder they fall. If we lay out all our cards now, they'll have time to coordinate their lies or counterattack. I want to wait until they've driven themselves into a corner, put on a massive show for the public and the police, and then drop the evidence to destroy them completely. Mrs. Higgins looked doubtful but firmly nodded. All right. I'll do whatever you say. By the time I saw her out, evening had fallen. The city lights flickered on, Neon signs from the commercial district, visible in the distance. My phone lit up again. This time it was Barbara's number. I answered silently. "Emily, listen to me clearly." Her voice was harsh and grating, accompanied by the loud background noise of the hospital lobby. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but get your ass down here right now. Or else. Do you think hiding will save you? Let me tell you, if my son found you once, he can find you 100 times. I know where your parents live in Boston. Do you want me to fly up there and make a scene at their workplaces so they can never show their faces again?" I listened quietly. When she finished spewing her venom, I spoke softly. "Barbara." The other end went silent. It was the first time in 3 years I hadn't called her mom, especially since she broke my leg. "Everything you just said was recorded." My voice was as still as a dead lake. "Threats? Extortion. It's all evidence. Keep going. The more you talk, the better. I'll hand it all over to the police and my lawyer. And feel free to go make a scene at my parents' workplaces. Just a reminder, my father is a retired Marine officer, and my mother is an award-winning high school principal. Who do you think people will believe? Respected educators and veterans? Or a crazy old woman who shattered her daughter-in-law's leg and threw a tantrum in a hospital lobby? Who are you calling a crazy old woman? You little, I heard your son's HR department had a chat with him today." I cut her off. "If they find out his mother behaves like white trash, do you think they'll keep him? What company wants a liability who can't handle his own domestic issues without making it public news? You dare. If you dare make my son lose his job, I'll kill you. You and your son already ruined my leg and my life." My voice finally rippled with emotion, but I choked it down. "Oh, by the way, you should remind Jason." Someone added a comment to that Reddit post exposing how he screwed up that major client account last year. When the walls fall, everyone pushes. Guess how many other skeletons he has in his closet? Dead silence on the line. Only heavy breathing. "One last piece of advice," I said. "Stop calling me. Stop making a scene. Sit quietly and wait for my lawyer to contact you about the divorce. If you cooperate, I might reconsider filing criminal charges. But if you keep acting like this," I paused, emphasizing every syllable, "I will bury the Miller family." I hung up and blocked her number. Then I texted Attorney Hayes. "You can initiate the next phase. Make sure HR accidentally receives the recording of my mother-in-law threatening me." I leaned back against the pillows, staring at my heavy cast. The pain was still there, but it was no longer unbearable. The day after I hung up on Barbara, Jason's HR department contacted Attorney Hayes again. This time, their attitude was vastly different. "Mr. Hayes, as a rule, our company does not interfere in our employees' domestic disputes. However, the online rumors which are affecting our corporate image are spiraling out of control." The HR director's voice echoed clearly through the speakerphone in the quiet hospital room. "We need to know if Miss Miller truly intends to file a police report, and if so, when." Hayes glanced at me and spoke smoothly. "My client is certainly considering filing a police report, but the timing depends entirely on the Miller family's behavior. However, my firm did not post those online allegations. As legal counsel, I suggest your company focus on whether your employee violated company codes of conduct rather than intervening in his domestic disputes." Silence on the other end. Understood. "But Mr. Miller is leading a crucial phase of a major project right now. If his personal life impacts his work, that is an internal company issue," Hayes said coolly. "My client cares about 2 things: divorce and legal accountability for her assault. For your reference, Mr. Miller's mother called my client yesterday to threaten her. We have the audio. If this harassment continues, we will immediately involve law enforcement and may release parts of that audio to the public." The HR director's tone shifted. "Mr. Hayes, we were completely unaware of that." "Now you are," Hayes said. "My client wants a peaceful resolution. But the prerequisite is that the opposing party ceases all harassment and threats. If not, we will utilize every legal avenue available." After the call, Hayes put down his phone. "Jason won't survive at that company much longer. They're trying to secure a massive government contract and care deeply about their public image. They will not tolerate a scandal like this." "Perfect." I looked down at my phone. Jason's iMessages were exploding. Anger, begging, panic. "Emily, I'm sorry. Let's just talk. The company is going to fire me. You know how hard I worked to get to this position. Mom says she's sorry too. She just lost her mind for a second. The lawyer says everything is negotiable. The house, the cars, the money. You can have it all. Just please don't ruin me. I'm begging you. I didn't reply to a single one. In the afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. My father-in-law, Richard. He came alone, holding a fruit basket, looking extremely awkward standing in the doorway of my room. Sarah tried to block him, but I shook my head. Let him in. Richard walked in, placed the basket on the nightstand, and stood at the foot of the bed without sitting. He looked years older than he had 3 days ago. Bags under his eyes, his posture slouched. Emily, he rasped, how's the leg? As you can see. Broken, casted, and I can't walk for 3 months, I said flatly. Maybe a permanent limp. His facial muscles twitched. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I should have stopped my wife that night. You didn't just fail to stop her, I corrected him. You thought it was perfectly fine to teach me a lesson. Your son thought so too. Right? Richard opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. The room fell into a long silence, amplified by the distant traffic outside. Emily? He finally spoke, his voice lower. Do you really have to divorce him? Jason says he was wrong. Truly wrong. Look, he's probably losing his job. Isn't that enough punishment? Barbara regrets it too. She just has a fiery temper, but she's not a bad person at heart. We're a family. Is there anything we can't overcome? Do we really have to go to court and become a laughingstock? I stared at him. In my memory, this man was always silent, always submissive to his wife. Now, his face was full of exhaustion and fear. But he wasn't worried about my leg. He wasn't regretting his son's abuse. He was afraid of the scandal, afraid of his son losing his job, afraid the Miller name would be dragged through the mud. We're a family, I repeated the words, laughing softly. Richard, in the last 3 years, did you ever truly consider me family? He stood there, stunned. You forced me to route my paycheck into your account, claiming you'd manage it for us. Did you say a word to defend me when Barbara screamed at me every night after I cooked and cleaned for the 3 of you? When I lay in the hospital after my miscarriage and she called me a useless incubator, did you comfort me? When I was writhing on the floor with a broken leg, you stood right there and watched. Did you consider me family then? I fired the questions rapidly. My voice wasn't loud, but every word struck his face like a hammer. He grew paler by the second, cold sweat beading on his forehead. He stammered. I thought that was between the women. Between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. It wasn't my place to interfere. Not your place? Or you just didn't care? I cut him off. In your eyes, I was never family. I was a tool you bought to serve you, breed for you, and bring in a paycheck. Right? No, Emily, how can you say that? Richard raised his voice, as if prodded in a sore spot. What didn't the Miller family do for you? We put a roof over your head, fed you. Jason never cheated on you. Why are you so ungrateful? Put a roof over my head? Fed me? I almost burst out laughing. My salary was twice what Jason makes. For 3 years, every dime went to you. I pay the mortgage on the house you live in. I pay for more than half the groceries and bills. Who was feeding who? Richard was left speechless. Mr. Miller, I changed how I addressed him, my voice turning icy. You came here today on behalf of your wife and son to beg me not to divorce, not to call the cops, not to escalate things. He hesitated, then nodded. Then I will give you a definitive answer. I looked him dead in the eyes. The divorce is happening. I am pressing charges for domestic violence. Whether I escalate it further depends entirely on your next moves. If you agree to an uncontested divorce, return 3 years of my salary, give me my share of the house equity, and pay proper damages for pain and suffering, I might consider dropping the criminal complaint. If you refuse or continue harassing my family, I paused. I will call the cops, release all the evidence online, and go to Jason's company. your subdivision, and everywhere you're known to broadcast exactly how the Miller family shatters a woman's leg and threatens her into silence. You decide what's worse, your son losing his job, or your entire family becoming pariahs in this city. Richard took a step back, looking at me like I was a stranger. His lips trembled, and he pointed a finger at me. You're vicious. Emily, I never knew you were such a vicious bitch. Vicious? I laughed until tears came to my eyes. When my leg was shattered and I was facing permanent disability, did you think you were vicious? When you all ate dinner and watched TV while I lay bleeding on the floor, did you think you were vicious? When your son told me this was my punishment for not obeying, was that vicious? My viciousness. I wiped my tears, my voice turning to frost, was taught to me, step by step, by the Miller family. Richard finally stumbled out of the room. The fruit basket left on the nightstand looked like a clumsy mockery. Nurse Sarah came in and quietly removed it. I'll throw this out. No, I said. Give it to the nurses at the station. Tell them it's a get-well gift from my father-in-law. Sarah looked at me, seemingly at a loss for words. Do you think I'm too cruel? I asked. She shook her head, then nodded. I just think you've become very strong, completely different from when you were first brought in, because I don't want to die anymore. I looked out the window. The sun was shining. When I was lying on that kitchen floor waiting for death, I realized something. Why do bad people always win? Because good people always blame themselves, always think of the bigger picture, always endure. Bad people don't care about any of that. They just use violence when they're unhappy, and dodge responsibility when things go wrong. So if they actually agree to the divorce and pay you, you really won't call the police? Sarah asked. I am absolutely calling the police, I said calmly. Domestic violence with a weapon is a felony. It doesn't disappear just because they throw a few bucks at me. But how and when I file the report is up to me. And the settlement money is what they owe me, not charity. At sunset, Attorney Hayes brought an update. Jason agreed to the uncontested divorce, on the condition that you don't file a police report, don't sue civilly, and delete all online posts. He's willing to sign the house over to you since you were paying the mortgage anyway, and offer $200,000 in alimony damages. $200,000, I laughed. My salary and bonuses over the last 3 years amount to over $300,000, all in their hands. The house equity is worth maybe $500,000, which is marital property anyway. He breaks my leg, potentially disables me for life, and wants to buy my silence, my medical bills, and my lost wages for $200,000? It's a lowball first offer, Hayes said. There's room to negotiate, but he's demanding it be finalized as soon as possible. He wants it signed before you're discharged. He's in a hurry. Naturally, I showed Hayes another screenshot from the Reddit thread. An anonymous whistleblower had dropped more details. Jason had been taking corporate kickbacks and padding his expense reports. The amounts weren't massive, but during this sensitive PR nightmare, it was lethal. His company gave him an ultimatum. Hayes understood immediately. Resign gracefully, or be fired. If he's fired with this hanging over his head, he'll be blacklisted in the industry. He's trying to settle this fast so he can tell HR it was a resolved domestic misunderstanding and save his job, or at least get a severance package. So, what's your play? Drag it out, I said simply. Don't agree, don't refuse. Just say my injuries are severe and I need time to think. Let the online rumors ferment for a few more days. Wait until his company loses patience and fires him first. Then he'll truly be backed into a corner. I looked at Hayes. I don't just want a house with a 30-year mortgage and $200,000. I want him to taste what absolute despair feels like. Hayes stared at me for a long time before nodding. Understood. But dragging it out is dangerous. If Jason is pushed to the brink, there's no telling what he might do. That's why we need to make sure his company executives accidentally hear the recording of his mother threatening me, I said. They need to know the Millers don't just commit violence. They threaten victims. HR will cut ties with him even faster to avoid liability. Hayes jotted down notes, stood up to leave, then paused. Emily, if I may ask? Go ahead. How long will the thrill of revenge last? He asked, frankly. You have a long life ahead of you after this divorce. Is it worth expending so much time and energy on these people? I remained silent for a long time, The sun was setting, painting the sky a blood red. Mr. Hayes, I'm not doing this for revenge, I said softly. I'm doing this so that years from now, when I wake up from a nightmare, when I touch this leg that may never heal right, I can tell myself I did everything I could. I made the people who hurt me pay the price. Only then can I truly move forward. I refuse to be trapped on that kitchen floor for the rest of my life. Hayes nodded and left without another word. The room fell quiet again. I texted my parents an update. My mother replied instantly. We got the apartment ready. The lawyer is paid for. Don't worry about anything. Just heal. Mom and Dad are always right behind you. Tears welled up. It was true. I had a sanctuary. I wasn't alone, and Jason was about to learn that the wife he thought he could control and trample had a force behind her that he couldn't dare touch. The news that Jason agreed to the divorce caused ripples I hadn't anticipated. The next day at noon, I received a call from Barbara. A new number. Her voice sounded bizarrely exhausted, carrying a pleading tone I had almost never heard. Emily, she started, and I genuinely wondered if she had the wrong number. Mom needs to talk to you. I stayed silent, letting her continue. Look, Jason admitted he was wrong. Truly wrong. He's giving you the house. He's offering extra money. Can't we just part amicably? Do we have to go to court and make a public spectacle? She paused, lowering her voice. I'm sorry. That day, I was wrong. I was so angry I lost my mind. You know my temper. But you were at fault too, right? If you had just accommodated me a little, an apology? I interrupted her softly. Are we talking about you shattering my leg? Silence on the line. If that's what this is about, I don't accept. My voice was flat, devoid of even anger. Apologies are for unintentional mistakes. You took a heavy rolling pin and smashed it into my leg once, twice, 3 times until the bone broke. That is aggravated assault. If I had a knife in my hand that night, guess who would be lying in this hospital bed right now? You. What the hell are you saying? Her facade shattered instantly, her shrillness returning. Emily, listen to me when I'm speaking nicely. Don't push your luck. Giving you the house is generous enough. What more do you want? Do you really think the Millers are scared of you? Then negotiations are off, I said. Mr. Hayes will handle everything. And by the way, the recording of you threatening me yesterday, it's already with my lawyer. If I get one more harassing call, or if my parents are bothered, that recording goes straight to the police and Jason's corporate board. Recording. You little bitch, you dared to record me? She screamed. Why wouldn't I? I asked. You dare to commit battery? What's a little recording? And I don't want to hear you call me a bitch again. Otherwise, I'll show you what a bitch backed into a corner can really do. I hung up. Minutes later, it rang again. This time it was Jason, from another new number. Emily, what the fuck do you want? His voice was hoarse, a mix of exhaustion and rage, like a drunkard. Mom apologized to you. I'm giving you the house and the money. What more do you want? Are you going to kill our whole family before you're satisfied? Jason. I leaned against the headboard, looking at my cast. You're suffering right now. He flinched. You're suffering because HR talked to you and you might lose your job. You're suffering because your mother has to lower her head and apologize. You're suffering because your dad is caught in the middle, right? Let me tell you something. I cut him off before he could speak. For the last 3 years, my everyday life was 100 times more agonizing than what you're feeling right now. When I lay on that floor with a broken leg, listening to your family eat and laugh in the living room, I was 10,000 times more agonizing than you. Jason, this is just the beginning. Everything you did to me, I will return to you in full. I heard heavy breathing, then the sound of something smashing against a wall. He was destroying things. Emily! You're a psycho bitch! He screamed. Yeah, you guys made me one. I laughed. Enjoy the ride. We haven't even started. I hung up and blocked the number. The world went quiet. But I knew Barbara and Jason weren't the type to surrender. Sure enough, Nurse Sarah rushed in that afternoon, looking pale. Emily, your mother-in-law is back downstairs. She brought 2 other women looks like relatives. They're making a scene in the lobby, demanding to see you. They're screaming that the hospital is hiding you. Where's security? They stopped them, but Barbara literally threw herself on the floor and is having a tantrum. Doctor, Evans notified hospital administration, but it's a PR nightmare. Plus, they somehow know you're on the second floor. They're blocking the elevators and asking everyone where 3045 Emily Miller is. I frowned. The information must have leaked when Richard visited yesterday. What exactly are they saying? I asked. They're screaming that you're mentally unstable, have violent tendencies, that you beat your mother-in-law at home, and that you self-harm to frame them. Sarah was furious. It's absurd. Let's just call the cops. If we call the cops, let them talk, I said. What? The more they say, the better. Sarah, please take your phone and record everything they do downstairs. Every second of it. Especially the part where they claim I beat people or self-harmed. Sarah's eyes lit up. Evidence, right? Yes. And tell Dr. Evans the hospital doesn't need to get involved. Let security handle it or call the police. If the cops need me, I'll give a statement, but I won't see the Millers. 30 minutes later, police sirens wailed outside. 20 minutes after that, silence returned. Sarah came back, excitedly waving her phone. Got it all. Your mother-in-law has quite the vocabulary. She threw herself on the floor, screaming that hospital staff assaulted her. But the moment the cops pulled out their cuffs, she miraculously got up. The cops escorted them out and told them to settle it in civil court. What about the two relatives? Aunts, I think. When the cops actually stepped in, they tucked their tails and claimed they didn't know anything. Just that Barbara dragged them along, Sarah scoffed. Some family? Expected. What did the police say? They filed an incident report and noted your information. They said once you're feeling better, you might need to go to the precinct to give a statement. Sarah paused. But the cops kind of took their side. They said she's an elderly woman, emotions run high, and since it's a domestic issue, you guys should just talk it out. I laughed coldly. Domestic issue. Domestic violence is never a domestic issue. It's a crime. But too many people, including some law enforcement, still view it as a private family matter meant to be mediated. It's fine. I have plenty of patience. At dusk, an unexpected guest arrived. Jason's direct manager, a Mr. Davis. A man in his mid-40s, sharply dressed in a suit, holding a fruit basket with an awkward expression. Miss Miller, sorry to intrude. I'm Davis, Jason's department director. I gestured to a chair. Have a seat, Mr. Davis. He remained standing, rubbing his hands together. I've heard about the situation. First, on behalf of the company, I want to express our sympathies. We're deeply sorry this happened. Thank you. I waited. Jason. He's a capable employee, but clearly has issues managing his personal life. Davis chose his words carefully. The company valued him, but his recent performance has been abysmal, and the external PR is having a severely negative impact on our firm. Get to the point. My bluntness made Davis flinch. He offered a bitter smile. To be frank, the company wants this resolved quickly. If you two can reconcile amicably, or at least divorce quietly without escalating the fallout, the company is willing to let Jason resign gracefully with a full severance package. But if this blows up and jeopardizes our upcoming government contract, the company will be forced to take drastic measures against him. I understood. Jason was a sacrificial pawn. If I played nice, they'd let him save face. If I played hardball, they'd fire him and likely dig up his expense report fraud to distance themselves entirely. Mr. Davis, I understand the company's position, I said slowly, but I am the victim here, and I'm the one with the shattered leg. Jason and his family haven't offered a single sincere apology. Instead, they came to this hospital, threw a tantrum, and told the public I was a mentally unstable abuser. Do you really expect me to sweep this under the rug for the sake of your corporate project? Davis looked extremely uncomfortable. Of course not. He should apologize and compensate you. I just mean a reasonable settlement benefits everyone. You were married, after all. Ending it too viciously isn't good for anyone, including your future. First sympathy, then subtle corporate pressure, then fake paternal advice. Unfortunately, I wasn't buying it. Mr. Davis, my demands are simple. I looked at him. First, Jason publicly, in writing, admits to his abuse and apologizes. Second, he pays full legal restitution. Medical bills, loss of earning capacity, pain and suffering, and the 3 years of my salary his family stole. Third, he and his family never contact me or my parents again. If he does these 3 things, I might consider not pursuing criminal charges. Davis's face changed. A public admission? Isn't that too extreme? He still has to work in this industry. That's his problem. I cut him off. He should have thought about the consequences before he watched his mother break my leg. What right does he have to demand forgiveness when he won't even admit fault? Miss Miller. Mr. Davis, you can leave. I issued the eviction order. This is my bottom line. If he agrees, tell him to call my lawyer. If not, I'll see him in court. Whether you fire him or keep him is an internal HR matter. It has nothing to do with me. Davis stood there, his face cycling through red, white, and pale before he finally sighed and set down the basket. Rest well, Miss Miller. I'll pass the message along. He reached the door, stopped, and looked back. You've changed a lot, Miss Miller. I met you at a company dinner once. You were very mild-mannered. People change when being mild-mannered gets them abused instead of respected. I repeated my mantra. When that happens, you have to pick up a weapon. After he left, Sarah whispered, he seemed somewhat reasonable. He's not, I shook my head. He just weighed the pros and cons for himself and his company. If Jason was an irreplaceable asset, or if my family was poor and powerless, he would have treated me very differently today. That's human nature. You can't rely on the goodwill of others. You just have to make yourself untouchable. That evening, Attorney Hayes sent me documentation proving Jason had embezzled via fake vendor invoices. Hayes had anonymously forwarded it to Jason's corporate auditing department and the IRS. The accompanying whistleblower complaint meticulously detailed Jason's fraud, questioning how a man of such low moral character could manage a government contract. These will be exactly where they need to be by tomorrow morning, Hayes texted. Also, I've edited the video of your mother-in-law's tantrum. I'll be posting it to Reddit, X, and TikTok shortly. Post it, I replied. Pressing send brought no hesitation, no cinematic rush of revenge, just cold, clinical peace. I knew this would back the Millers into an inescapable corner. They would lash out, go crazy, try something extreme. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Once upon a time, I feared losing my marriage, feared public judgment, feared disappointing my parents, feared the unknown. But now, marriage was a shackle I was breaking. Judgment was already passing. My parents were my absolute bedrock, and the future, no matter how bleak, was infinitely better than waiting to die on that kitchen floor. Late that night, my phone lit up. A text from Jason. One single line that made my pupils constrict. Emily, you want to play hardball? Let's go all the way. Your dad is a retired Marine. Your mom is a principal. I wonder how they'd feel if the whole town knew what a whore their precious daughter is. There it was. The mask was completely off. The facade of decency stripped away. They bared their ugliest fangs, targeting my only weakness, my parents. I stared at the message, then slowly typed a reply, emphasizing every word. Jason, let me be clear. If my parents suffer any collateral damage, if they receive even a single harassing phone call, I will show you what going all the way really means. You and your family won't have a single place to hide. Don't believe me? Try it. Jason's threat was like a viper uncoiling in the dark. I didn't tell my parents immediately. They were older. My dad had a heart condition and my mom had high blood pressure. Sudden shock was dangerous. Plus, I believed Jason was bluffing. He was already drowning. He didn't have the resources to launch an actual attack on my parents back in Boston. But I had to prepare. I texted Attorney Hayes. He replied instantly. Understood. I have a buddy in Boston law enforcement. I'll ask him to keep an eye on your parents' neighborhood. It might also be a good idea for them to stay with relatives for a few days. I took his advice. I called my mom, keeping my voice light. Mom, the Millers are getting desperate and might try to harass you by phone. Set your phones to block unknown numbers, and maybe go stay at Uncle Dan's place in Cape Cod for a few days. Emily, what's going on? My mother's voice was laced with worry. Did they do something to you again? No, just taking precautions. I tried to sound calm. If you're safe, I can focus. Oh, And Dad's buddy from the Marines? Uncle Bob at the Boston PD? Maybe give him a heads up on the situation. Just so he knows. My mother was silent for a few seconds. Emily, tell me the truth. What exactly are you doing? I know you're angry, but don't do anything stupid. Don't get yourself hurt. I won't, Mom. I gripped the phone. I'm just taking back what's mine and making them pay for what they did. Legally. I won't cross the line. After hanging up, I looked out into the pitch-black night. The sleepless city lights blinked like countless cold eyes. You want to play dirty, Jason? Let's play. The next morning, Nurse Sarah brought me breakfast with a weird look on her face. Did you see the news? What news? She handed me her phone. A push notification from a local news outlet. The headline caught my eye. Family of tech executive denies online abuse allegations. Claims smear campaign by unstable spouse. The article was a masterclass in gaslighting. It didn't name Jason, but heavily implied the accused was a victim of an internet mob. It quoted anonymous sources, commenters, claiming the wife had a history of mental instability and fabricated the assault for financial gain. It concluded with a plea for the public to reserve judgment and avoid ruining an innocent man's life. Concluded with a plea for the public to reserve judgment. And avoid ruining an innocent man's life. They paid off the media. Not paid off, just pulled strings. I read the article calmly. Richard used to be a mid-level manager at the Department of Transportation before he retired. He still had some connections. Calling in a favor at a local paper to publish a balanced piece and buy his son breathing room was standard procedure. What do? We just let them slander you? What's the rush? I put the phone down. This vague article doesn't hurt me. It's only going to infuriate the people who actually know the truth. By noon, the comment section of that article exploded. Swarms of anonymous accounts flooded in. Some named Jason and his company explicitly. Others posted screenshots of his internal corporate disciplinary records, Attorney Hayes' handiwork. Then, someone uploaded the video of Barbara throwing a tantrum in the hospital lobby. I'm a security guard at this hospital. I can testify. The woman in this video is the monster mother-in-law who shattered her daughter-in-law's leg and then came here to throw a fit. Jason Miller used to be my coworker. The guy is a creep who constantly hit on female staff and got reported to HR multiple times. The victim is my neighbor. She's the sweetest woman. She suffered 3 years of hell in that house. I once heard the mother-in-law scream at her for being a barren incubator. Absolute psychos. Support the victim pressing charges. Zero tolerance for domestic violence. Public opinion swung violently back in my favor. The article intended to clear his name became the catalyst that blew the scandal wide open. In the afternoon, Attorney Hayes brought 2 pieces of news. One good, one bad. The good news. Jason's company buckled under the pressure and released a public statement. Due to personal conduct that has severely impacted his work and the company's reputation, employee Jason Miller has been terminated, effective immediately. The statement also hinted they were cooperating with authorities regarding financial irregularities during his tenure. Jason wasn't just fired. He was facing embezzlement charges. The bad news. Jason had lost his mind. He called me, Hayes said, his voice heavy. He said if you don't sign the divorce settlement on his terms and delete everything online within 3 days, he's going to drive to Boston with a shotgun and take your parents out with him. The hospital room went dead silent. He's insane. That's a literal death threat, Sarah gasped. Call the police. I remained silent. This was within the realm of possibility, but more extreme than I expected. I knew he'd threaten me, but I didn't think he'd go full scorched earth. Emily, I strongly advise we contact the police immediately and get a restraining order for your parents, Hayes said grimly. This isn't a joke. The man lost his job, his reputation, and is facing jail time. He has nothing left to lose. People like that are capable of anything. Of course we call the police, I said slowly. But what happens after? Can the cops protect my parents 24/7? Can they arrest him before he actually attempts a crime? Death threats usually just result in a warning or a misdemeanor charge unless he acts on them. Hayes was silent. He knew I was right. Then what do we do? Sarah was frantic. Do you really think he'll? He won't. I cut her off, my voice strangely calm. Jason is a supreme narcissist. He values his own life above everything else. A murder-suicide? He doesn't have the guts. This is a terror tactic from a cornered rat trying to force me into submission. But what if? There is no what if. I looked at them. Mr. Hayes, transcribe that threat recording. Bundle it with the assault evidence, the hospital video, and his embezzlement files. Sarah, please tell Dr. Evans I want to be discharged early. Discharged? You can't even walk, Sarah cried out. I have a wheelchair, I said. It's time for me to step out of the shadows. If I hide in this hospital, he'll think I'm scared, which will only embolden him. I need to show him I'm not afraid. I have nothing left to lose either. And a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the room. Hayes looked at me deeply. What are you planning to do? I'm holding a small press conference, I said. Right here in the hospital conference room. We only need 2 or 3 influential local media outlets. I won't cry. I won't beg for pity. I will calmly state the facts and present the evidence, including his latest death threat. And I will call 911 and press charges live. On camera, Sarah and Hayes stood frozen. You're escalating this to the absolute maximum, Hayes said. I didn't escalate it. He forced me to. I corrected him. He uses fear to control people. I'm going to show him what real fear is. Once the entire country knows he made a terrorist threat against my parents, he'll be public enemy number 1. He'll be too busy running from the feds to hurt anyone. But your safety. The hospital is a public place with security and media. He won't dare try anything. I paused. I need to flip the narrative completely. The press conference was set for 3 days later at 2:00 p.m. During this time, Jason sent several more deranged texts. Once, he called me dead drunk in the middle of the night, screaming that he knew which hospital I was at and that he was going to kill me slowly. I recorded every call and sent them to Hayes. My parents were safe at my uncle's house in Cape Cod. My dad's police buddy had arranged for unmarked cruisers to patrol the area. My mom cried on the phone several times but ultimately chose to support me. Emily, Mom just wants you safe, she sobbed. Nothing else matters. It does matter, I said. Safety matters. But so does dignity. If I back down now, I'll live in the shadow of the Millers forever, and you'll never have a day of peace. On the morning of the press conference, Dr. Evans checked my leg. Healing well, but absolutely no weight bearing. Be careful in the wheelchair. He frowned. Emily, are you sure? Public opinion is on your side. You don't need to put yourself in the crosshairs like this. Doctor? Evans, could the crosshairs be any bigger? I asked calmly. He threatened to shoot my parents. If I don't do this, he'll think he won. I have to show him his threats, just make him look like a clown. That's the only way he'll stop. Doctor. Evans sighed and didn't push it. He just told the nurses to have painkillers and sedatives ready, just in case. At 2:00 p.m., in a small hospital conference room, 3 local news reporters and 2 prominent local bloggers sat waiting. They were the ones who had supported me online, and Hayes had invited them to witness this. I sat in my wheelchair, my left leg elevated in its heavy cast. Sarah wheeled me in. I wore no makeup and a loose hospital gown. I was pale from blood loss and pain, but my back was straight, and my eyes calmly swept the room. I didn't cry, I didn't complain, I didn't yell. I simply used the calmest voice to state the facts. 3 years of marriage, extreme control by my in-laws, my husband's shift from apathy to abuse, the prolonged psychological and financial abuse, the night my leg was shattered, being left on the floor, the subsequent harassment, defamation, and finally, the death threats. After every segment, Hayes presented the corresponding evidence: X-rays, medical reports, audio recordings, text screenshots, CCTV footage, Barbara's hospital tantrum, Jason's termination letter, and the gaslighting article. Finally, I played Jason's most recent voicemail. The slurred, drunken voice, full of vicious curses and murderous threats, echoed through the quiet room. I'll kill your parents. Murder-suicide. We all die together. The recording ended. The room was dead silent. The reporters frantically typed on their laptops. The bloggers looked sick to their stomachs. This is everything I've endured over the last month, I said, my voice slightly raspy but crystal clear. I didn't hold this press conference for sympathy. I did it to tell Jason Miller, and anyone who thinks like him. Domestic violence is a crime. Threats and terror will not silence victims. They will only bring the hammer of justice down harder and faster. I paused, looking at a female reporter. Sarah, I remember your investigative piece on domestic violence statistics in this state. Only a fraction of cases lead to criminal prosecution. Why is that? The reporter blinked, then answered. Because evidence is hard to gather, and victims often drop charges out of fear, financial dependence, or a desire to keep the family together. Exactly. I nodded. Because the abusers have no boundaries, and the victims have too much to lose. But today, I want to use my experience to tell everyone, do not be afraid. Keep the evidence. If the cops don't help the first time, call again. If one agency fails you, go to the press. There is justice in this society, and there are laws to protect you. I finished speaking and nodded at Attorney Hayes. Hayes stepped forward, holding his phone up to the cameras. As of this moment, acting as legal counsel for Emily Miller, I am formally dialing 911 to report these crimes. We are charging Jason Miller and Barbara Miller with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful imprisonment, extortion, and making terroristic threats. We are submitting all evidence to the authorities. He hit speakerphone. 911. What is your emergency? A crisp dispatcher's voice echoed. Every camera zoomed in on the phone. Hello. I need to report a felony assault and terroristic threats. Hayes' voice was steady. He provided his name, the location, the timeline of events, and the identities of Jason and Barbara Miller. The call lasted 5 minutes. The dispatcher recorded everything and immediately dispatched officers to the Millers' suburban home and the hospital to collect the evidence. The call ended. The room was quiet for a moment, then applause broke out. First the female reporter, then the rest. It wasn't loud, but it was sustained. I didn't smile, and I didn't cry. But the massive boulder that had crushed my chest for 3 years finally felt like it was cracking open. The press conference aired that evening on the local news, dominating headlines and social media. Victim of savage domestic abuse speaks out. Calls 911 live on air to arrest husband following murder, suicide threats. The internet exploded. Jason and Barbara's names, wedding photos, and corporate headshots were plastered everywhere. The backlash was biblical. Richard's old connections at the DOT were useless. In fact, investigative journalists started digging into his past government contracts. What were the Millers doing during all this? According to limited information Hayes got from the police, the investigation was active. Police had raided the Miller home within an hour of the 911 call. Barbara tried to throw a tantrum and resist arrest, but was sternly warned by officers and eventually taken in for questioning. Jason wasn't home. His phone was off. Richard just kept repeating that it was a misunderstanding and that his daughter-in-law was mentally ill. At the hospital, detectives took my official statement, collected copies of all my evidence, and told me to call them immediately if anything happened. After the police left, I leaned back in my wheelchair, feeling a strange emptiness. Not fear, just the sensation of a tightly wound string finally going slack. Nurse Sarah handed me a warm cup of water, whispering, "Your father-in-law came by earlier." Security blocked him downstairs. "He begged to see you, said he needed to talk to you privately." "No," I shook my head. "Tell security no member of the Miller family is allowed near my room. If they try to force their way in, call 911. Understood." Richard waited downstairs for hours before finally leaving after dark. I didn't know what he wanted to say. And I didn't care. Probably more gaslighting, threats, and begging. But we were past the point of conversation. At 9:00 p.m., my phone rang. A completely unknown local number. I answered silently. A long silence. Heavy breathing. Then, Jason's voice. Hoarse, dry, sounding like it was squeezed from a dying throat. "Emily, you won." I didn't answer. I lost my job. I lost my friends, my relatives. Everyone's laughing at me. Dad's old boss called him and cursed him out. Mom collapsed from high blood pressure and is bedridden. "Are you happy now?" His voice held the numbness of a broken man. "What do you want? My life? I already told you what I wanted. I finally spoke, my voice a calm lake. An apology, restitution, and to be left alone. You refused to give me any of that and instead used terror and threats to escalate this. You chose this path. Apology? Restitution? He repeated, suddenly laughing. It was a horrendous sound. And then what? I become a convicted felon and my life is over. And you? You walk away, the clean victim. You take my money and start a new life. You're really calculating, Emily. Calculating? I laughed too, full of mockery. If I were calculating, I wouldn't have married you 3 years ago. I would have left the first time you insulted me. I would have called the cops the night you broke my leg instead of begging you for help. Was my grand calculation to get my leg shattered by your mother and wait to die on the floor? He had nothing to say. This is the last time we speak. I reined in my emotions, my voice turning to ice. Issue a public, written apology. Pay the restitution required by law. And disappear from my life and my family's life forever. Do that. We sign the divorce papers and I won't push for maximum sentencing. Don't do it, and I'll see you in court. I'll make sure your mother tastes a prison cell. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon carries real jail time. Do you think she can survive that at her age? You wouldn't dare. Why wouldn't I asked. I already died once on that floor. What do I have to fear? Jason, the choice is yours. Do you want your pride, your freedom, your money, or your mother out of jail? Pick one. I hung up, blocked the number, and deleted the call log. I didn't need to record it. I had said my piece and given him his final chance. I knew Jason wouldn't surrender easily. A narcissist like him would grasp at phantom straws even as he fell off a cliff. But I was in no rush. The cops had an open case. Public opinion was a raging inferno, and his social death was absolute. I was in a hospital bed, protected by doctors, lawyers, the public, and my parents. Time was on my side. Late that night, I asked Sarah to adjust my bed so I could sit up and look out the window. The city lights glowed. This was the city I moved to for love, the city that gave me 3 years of nightmares. But right now, it didn't feel so cold and alien. The hospital saved my life. The nurses gave me warmth. The police took my case. The media amplified my voice. And Mrs. Higgins, and the strangers online, the world wasn't pitch black like the Miller house. Even in despair, light finds a way in. My phone lit up. A text from my mom. Emily, are you asleep? I made your favorite clam chowder. And overnight, shipped it in a cooler. It should arrive tomorrow morning. Don't think about anything, just heal. Mom is always here. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned off the light. In the darkness, I let the tears fall silently. They weren't tears of grievance or pain. They were tears of finally breathing again. Tears of seeing the light. Tears of no longer being afraid. I knew the battle wasn't over. The Millers' final counterattack might be more deranged than I could imagine. But I wasn't afraid. Broken bones heal. The scars will make them stronger. My shattered heart would mend, wiser for the trauma, and those who committed violence would finally pay for their sins. On the third day after the police opened the case, the Millers finally made a real move. Not an apology. Not a settlement. A lawsuit. They sued me for libel and defamation, demanding a public apology, retraction of all statements, and $500,000 in emotional distress damages. The plaintiff was Jason. Richard had a process server deliver the papers directly to the hospital. Attached to the lawsuit were a few blurry photos. Photos of me from college, hanging out normally with a male classmate, maliciously cropped to look intimate. They also included a copy of my medical records from college when I sought therapy for mild depression. God knows how they got those. This is a delay tactic, Emily. Attorney Hayes held the lawsuit, looking grave but unsurprised. They're muddying the waters. They're using a defamation countersuit to fight your domestic violence charges. They're using your past medical history and these photos to destroy your credibility, paint you as a promiscuous, mentally unstable woman framing her husband. It's a classic abuser's playbook. I looked at the lawsuit. Every word dripped with shameless malice. How dare they? Sarah trembled with anger. They literally broke your leg, and they have the nerve to sue you for money? Because they have no other options, I was surprisingly calm. The police, the medium, the job, their connections. All their cards are useless now. Litigation is their last resort. It drags out the clock, disgusts me, and maybe scares off some weak-willed bystanders. What do we do? Will this hurt your case? Sarah asked anxiously. Not a chance, Hayes answered for me, his voice brimming with confidence. In the U.S., truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Everything Emily stated is factual and backed by hard evidence. As for these photos and therapy records, he held up the blurry copies and sneered. First, obtaining these was a massive HIPAA and privacy violation. Second, it's completely irrelevant to whether or not they assaulted you. Finally, seeking therapy for depression is healthcare, not a character flaw. Trying to use this to attack a victim will only piss off the judge, but since they filed it, the court has to process it, hold hearings, go through motions. I looked at Hayes. This will take a long time, won't it? Hayes nodded. A civil suit like this? 6 months minimum, maybe a year or two. They're trying a war of attrition to drain your time, energy, and finances until you settle. Then let them drag it out, I said, tapping the lawsuit. Mr. Hayes, file the countersuit. Sue Jason and Barbara for aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and extortion. Combine their civil suit with ours. If they want a legal war, I'll give them one. A countersuit takes prep time, Hayes hesitated. And seeing this through a long criminal and civil process will be brutal on your mental and physical state. I can handle it, I interrupted him. If they want to drag this out, let's go. Let's see who breaks first. I knew this was a war of attrition. The Millers had lost their reputation and income, but they still had the house, and some savings, mostly from the mortgage I paid. I had my parents and a top lawyer, but endless litigation is hell. Yet I knew I couldn't retreat. One step back, and all this effort was for nothing. They would be vindicated, and I'd live under the shadow of a liar forever. Also, I added, release their lawsuit, including the photos and the therapy records, to the public. Let everyone see how shameless they are. Release it? Hayes was surprised. That could impact the jury pool. They were brave enough to submit it to a court. Why should I be afraid of the public seeing it? I smiled coldly. I want everyone to see the gutter tactics abusers use when they're cornered. If they wanted to use public opinion to pressure me, they better be prepared for the blowback. Hayes nodded. Understood. I'll handle the PR carefully so it doesn't give them leverage. The night the lawsuit was leaked, Jason texted me from yet another new number. Not a threat, not a scream, but a total, collapsing breakdown. Emily, stop. Please. Mom is in the hospital. She had a stroke from the stress. She's half paralyzed. Dad aged 10 years overnight. Everyone spits on us in the street. I lost my job, my friends. We are ruined. Do you really have to do this? Those photos and records? Dad got them through a shady PI. It wasn't my idea. I was wrong. We were all wrong. We'll apologize publicly. You can have the house and the money. Just drop the charges. Delete the posts. End this. I can't take it anymore. Do you want me to kill myself? Think of the 3 years we were married. Please give us a way out. I stared at the text. Barbara had a stroke? Half paralyzed? It was shocking, but entirely predictable. A woman so arrogant and controlling suddenly reduced to a pariah facing prison, the psychological shock was enough to break an old woman's health. Richard's hair turning white? The silent enabler was finally paying the price. Jason, socially dead and friendless. It sounded so pathetic. The old me might have softened. I might have thought, did I go too far? Should I give them a second chance? But not the current me. I opened the keyboard and typed slowly. Jason, now you beg for mercy. Do you know how I felt lying on the kitchen floor with a shattered leg begging you to take me to the ER? Do you know how I lived for the last 3 years? Your mother's stroke is karma. Your father's gray hair is the price for watching me scream in pain and saying I needed to be taught a lesson. Our marriage is dead. If you want to survive, sign the public confession. Before I could hit send, a soft knock came at the door. A middle-aged woman walked in. She looked familiar. Aunt Susan. Jason's aunt. I hadn't seen her in years because she despised Barbara and avoided family gatherings. Emily, she called out. her expression complex. I came to see you. I looked at her warily. Are you here to convince me to stop? Susan shook her head and set down a fruit basket. I came to apologize. Apologize? Yes. I knew things were bad at my brother's house, but I didn't want to get involved. I sinned against you. She bowed deeply. I leaned away. You don't need to do that. What Jason and his parents did has nothing to do with you. Of course it does. Susan stood up, her eyes red. I'm their family. I knew certain things, and I turned a blind eye. When you had your miscarriage, Barbara intentionally stopped Jason from taking you to the ER right away. My heart dropped. How do you know that? Barbara. She bragged about it to me in secret. Susan's face twisted with disgust and pain. She said the baby wasn't a true Miller anyway, so it was better it died. I called her a psycho, but she's my sister-in-law, and I didn't say anything to anyone else. The suspicion I had buried deep down, the one my parents had raised but I had dismissed out of denial, was true. And your bank accounts, Susan continued. Barbara held them. Every time you visited your parents in Boston, she searched your bags to make sure you weren't sneaking her money to them. When your parents visited, she treated them like garbage. Susan listed the offenses one by one. With each one, my face grew paler. You knew all this? I asked. I knew. Susan closed her eyes in agony. I tried to argue with them a few times, but it was useless. Richard is whipped. Jason is a mama's boy. I thought if I just stayed away, it wasn't my problem. But I never thought they'd be this evil. I never thought they'd do this to you. She covered her face and sobbed. I didn't comfort her. To know and remain silent is to be complicit. Her guilt was real, but my forgiveness wasn't hers to take right now. After she calmed down, I spoke. Aunt Susan, you didn't just come here to apologize, did you? Susan wiped her eyes, her gaze hardening. No. I came to tell you something that might help you. What? Barbara's stroke? It's fake. Susan lowered her voice. I went to see her at the hospital yesterday. She claims her right side is paralyzed, but her eyes and color don't look like a stroke victim's. My mother-in-law had a real stroke. I know what it looks like. I said a few nasty things to provoke her, and I saw her fingers twitch and her eyelids flutter. She's faking it. She's trying to get sympathy, so you'll drop the charges. I froze. Faking an illness. That was exactly something Barbara would do. Are you sure? Positive. And I overheard Richard talking to the doctor, begging him to write a severe diagnosis, saying her life was in danger. The doctor refused, but prescribed her some mild sedatives. So that was it. Using a fake illness for moral blackmail and to dodge legal consequences. And, Susan continued, their defamation lawsuit isn't about winning. It's a stall tactic. Jason told Richard to transfer all their savings, plus the money left in the account you used to pay the mortgage, into a hidden offshore account, about $300,000. They're hiding assets, so even if you win the civil suit, you won't get a dime. My heart sank. A cornered dog truly will jump a wall. Thank you for telling me this, I said sincerely. This information is incredibly important. Don't thank me. I don't deserve it. Susan shook her head and pulled an old, cracked iPhone out of her purse. Take this. It's Jason's old phone. My nephew was playing with it and managed to recover some deleted data. Chat logs, photos, voice memos. I didn't look closely, but it might help you. She placed the phone on the bed and looked at me deeply. Emily, the Miller family wronged you. Make them pay what they owe. Don't go soft. With that, she turned and left, her posture slumping, looking old and lonely. I picked up the cracked iPhone. It turned on. What was inside? Evidence of their control? Their plotting? I didn't open it. I handed it straight to Attorney Hayes when he arrived. I might need a forensics expert, Hayes said, looking serious. The contents of this could be a game changer. I have a tech guy, Hayes said. The passcode can be bypassed. Give it 3 or 4 days to recover the deleted data. Also, I used some back channels to get Barbara's actual medical file. He pulled out some papers. The diagnosis is a minor thanks in advance, a mini stroke caused by hype stroke, with slight, temporary right side weakness. Essentially, a minor stress-induced incident. nowhere near half-paralyzed or life-threatening. The attending physician even noted in the chart, patient's family repeatedly requested a more severe diagnosis, request denied. Faking it, or at least massively exaggerating it. As for the assets, Hayes adjusted his glasses. I filed a pre-litigation asset freeze, but the Miller accounts only had about $40,000 left. The account you deposited your salary into had $280,000 withdrawn in cash over 5 transactions, starting 3 days after the assault. Richard made the withdrawals. He's on bank CCTV. Can we get it back? If the judge rules it intentional asset dissipation during a divorce, they can award you the equivalent value from other assets, like the house. But tracking the actual cash is very hard. Hayes was blunt. Still, the withdrawal records and CCTV prove they are hiding money. Judges hate that. Good. The money was important, but right now, I cared more about what was on that cracked iPhone. 3 days later, Hayes returned with a USB drive and a stack of printed transcripts. His expression was a mix of fury, disgust, and relief. We recovered almost everything. He plugged the USB into his laptop. Most of the texts are just him and his frat buddies. But there are some photos you've never seen. He opened a folder labeled 2021. Inside were our wedding photos. Sweet, happy. But as he scrolled, the tone shifted. Photos of my exhausted back as I cooked. Photos of me asleep at my desk while working late. Photos of my pale face after my miscarriage. The angles were all hidden, taken without my knowledge. He was secretly photographing me. It gets worse. Hayes opened a locked folder. The password had been bypassed. Inside were horrific photos. Bruises on my arms, scraped knees. And a photo of the blood-stained hospital sheets from my miscarriage. The timestamp showed it was taken while I was unconscious. Why would he take these? Read the texts. Hayes opened a backup file and searched the keyword photos. A chat popped up between Jason and a contact named Dave HR. Dave HR. Bro, those bruises on your wife. Your mom really didn't hit her, right? Jason. Nah, she tripped. But I take pics anyway. Gotta keep them for later. If she ever steps out of line, I use these to prove she's unstable and self-harms. Dave HR. Damn, you're a genius. Jason. You can't coddle women. You gotta make them scared of you. Fear keeps them in line. Dave. HR. Did you take pics of the miscarriage too? That's brutal. Jason. Always keep an ace in the hole. If her parents ever come sniffing around, I can say her body was too weak to carry a kid. Not our fault. The dates were from 3 years ago, barely 6 months into our marriage. He was calculating from the very beginning. He was building a blackmail file. He didn't see me as a wife. He saw me as a pet to be broken and managed. Ice shot through my veins, freezing me to the core. I gripped the bedsheets until my knuckles turned white. There are also audio recordings. Hayes' voice pulled me back from the abyss. He clicked an audio file. Background noise sounded like a family dinner. Then, Barbara's shrill voice. Did you see that, Richard? She complains the food is salty, and Jason caters to her. This is unacceptable. She'll be walking all over us soon. Tell your son to fix this, Richard's mumbling voice. They're young, it's normal for newlyweds. Normal my ass, Barbara snapped. When I married into this family, your mother didn't let me sit down without permission. These modern girls are too arrogant. Jason, don't give her an inch. You need to lay down the law. She spent too much on her parents when we visited Boston. Take her debit card, Jason's voice, chuckling but cold. Mom, chill. I have the card. She doesn't know yet. She'll ask for it eventually. I'll make an excuse. If I push too hard now, she might run. Let her try. She married a miller. She dies a miller. Her parents are halfway across the country. What can they do? Barbara scoffed. Oh, and take her to the doctor. Make sure she can actually breed. If she can't, we cure her or divorce her. I'm not waiting forever for a grandson. The recording ended. Dated 1 month after my miscarriage. So that was it. The we want a grandchild narrative was just cold, hard calculation. To them, my body was a breeding machine. If it failed quality control, it was to be repaired or discarded. There's one more. Hayes's voice dropped to a whisper. From the night your leg was broken? He clicked the final file. It started with the sickening thud of the rolling pin hitting bone, followed by my blood-curdling scream. Then, Barbara's screaming curses. Richard's weak, pathetic protests. Jason saying, "This is your punishment for not listening." Then, for nearly an hour, the recording captured my agonizing groans and pleas for help from the kitchen floor, perfectly contrasted with the sounds of the Millers eating BBQ ribs, watching a World War II movie, and laughing in the living room. It was a symphony of pure hell. The recording ended when the sound of me dragging myself out the pantry window faded away, while they were still debating the plot of the movie. Hayes muted the laptop. The hospital room was deathly silent. I was shaking all over. Not from fear, but from a profound, chilling absurdity. What kind of demon's lair had I lived in for 3 years? The marriage I thought was real was a meticulously planned psychological enslavement, and I, like an idiot, thought if I just endured enough, they would eventually show me warmth. Emily. Hayes's voice brought me back to reality. This evidence is thermonuclear. The texts, the photos, the recordings, especially the one of the assault, and their complete indifference. This is no longer just a civil dispute. This is irrefutable proof of felony crimes, aggravated assault, unlawful imprisonment, criminal coercion, and it proves this wasn't an isolated incident, but a prolonged, premeditated campaign of physical and psychological torture. In a courtroom, this is an execution. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Can this send them straight to prison? For aggravated assault causing severe bodily harm, the sentence is usually 2 to 10 years depending on the state. But factor in the prolonged abuse, the extreme cruelty, the lack of remorse, the hidden assets, and the perjury of filing a fake defamation suit, a judge will throw the book at them. Barbara might be the primary assailant, and her age and health issues might be factored in, but Jason, as a complicit accessory and instigator, will not escape prison time. Richard's fate depends on the DA. More importantly, their defamation suit will instantly collapse. The judge will see exactly who is lying and who is maliciously framing who. Good. I said one word. What's next? Make copies. One for the police to add to the criminal file, one for me for the civil and divorce suits, and the rest, I looked at Hayes. Leak it online. Anonymously. Hayes froze. All of it? No, I shook my head. Just the highlights. The audio of my leg breaking. The chat logs with his buddy. The audio of them calculating my salary and demanding forced medical exams. Add a simple timeline and explanation. Once we post this, we wait. For what? For their final death throes, I said. When all the masks are ripped off and the ugliest truths are exposed to the sunlight, what will they do? Will they collapse entirely? Or will they bite like rabid dogs? Hayes understood. You want to push them into doing something so extreme they get arrested immediately. I just want the public to know the truth, I corrected him. How they react is their choice. But whatever they do, this evidence ensures they only dig their own graves deeper. That evening, the heavily redacted audio clips and chat screenshots appeared on major platforms. Reddit, X, TikTok, accompanied by a clinical timeline. Leaked audio. Tech exec and mother plot to control wife's finances. Treat her like incubator. Break her leg and laugh while she bleeds on floor. It wasn't a ripple. It was a tsunami. The audio of Barbara's cruel calculations, Jason's psychopathic texts, my blood-curdling screams contrasting with their laughter, it made everyone who heard it sick to their stomachs. Is he even human? He's a demon. I'm crying listening to this. How much despair was she in? Taking pics of her injuries to blackmail her later? These people are psychopaths. I felt bad for the mom having a stroke yesterday. Turns out it was fake. Disgusting. Put them in prison. Lock them up. Public opinion erupted into an uncontrollable inferno. The Millers' defamation suit became the most grotesque joke on the internet. My phone flooded with messages of support. Local domestic violence advocacy groups reached out, offering pro bono help and protection. And the Miller family went completely silent. No threatening texts. No new lawsuits. No relatives visiting. No public statements. Like rats stripped of their fur and dragged into the blinding sun, they scrambled into the darkest holes, trembling, waiting for final judgment. But I knew silence is often the most dangerous sound, especially from madmen who have lost everything and have nothing left but hatred. Hayes hired private security to guard my parents in Boston. The hospital beefed up security. Dr. Evans even suggested I move to a highly secure private rehab facility. I refused. Whatever is coming, I said. Hiding won't solve it. I want to see what else they're capable of. The moment the door creaked open, I woke up. Not because of the noise, it was as light as a cat's, but because of instinct. The skin-crawling sensation of being stared at by a viper. I didn't move. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing even, pretending to be deep asleep. My left hand quietly slipped under my pillow, gripping the heavy-duty panic alarm Nurse Sarah had smuggled to me. At the same time, I shifted my toes. Hovering over the emergency call button, Dr. Evans had custom-wired to the foot of my bed, connected directly to the nurse's station. A dark shadow stopped at the door, adjusting to the gloom, locating me. Then, he slowly approached. His footsteps were unsteady, and a thick stench of whiskey rolled off him. Jason. I didn't need to see his face. His aura was unmistakable. He stopped beside my bed. By the faint moonlight bleeding through the blinds, I could see his bloodshot eyes, his twisted face, and the hunting knife in his hand. "Emily," he rasped, his voice sounding like it crawled out of hell. "You ruined me. You ruined everything." I didn't open my eyes. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer, but I forced my muscles to stay relaxed. I was waiting for the right moment, waiting for the nurse's station to respond, or for him to get just a little closer. I lost my job. I lost my friends. I lost my money. I lost my house. Everyone spits on me. Even my dad called me a piece of shit. He muttered incoherently, the tip of the knife trembling in the dim light. "This is all your fault. All your fault, you toxic bitch." The whiskey stench hit my face. The cold steel of the knife pressed against my throat. The icy touch paralyzed me, but I forced myself not to scream or open my eyes. If I just get rid of you, it'll all be over." His voice held a manic thrill. "You won't be able to testify. The internet posts will stop. I'll still be Jason Miller. I can start over." He pressed the knife slightly harder. I felt a sharp sting as the blade broke the skin. Now. I snapped my eyes open, using every ounce of strength in my left arm to smash the heavy plastic panic alarm directly into his temple. Simultaneously, my right hand grabbed his knife-wielding wrist, and I thrust my heavy-casted left leg up, kicking him squarely in the groin. A piercing, high-decibel siren instantly shattered the silence of the hospital room. The deafening noise made Jason flinch. The blunt force trauma to his temple and the agonizing kick to his groin made him scream, his grip on the knife loosening. I used the fraction of a second to roll off the opposite side of the bed, crashing hard onto the floor. Agonizing pain ripped through my shattered leg, but I ignored it, screaming at the top of my lungs. "Help! He's got a knife! Help!" The hospital room door flew open. 2 on-duty security guards charged in, followed by a panicked Nurse Sarah and the night shift doctor. The fluorescent light snapped on, flooding the room with blinding white light. Jason stood there, blinded and disoriented, clutching the knife, seemingly unable to process what had just happened. "Drop the weapon! Now!" a guard bellowed, unholstering his taser. The guards didn't hesitate. One tackled him, wrestling the knife away, while the other pinned his arms behind his back. Jason fought like a trapped animal, howling and thrashing, but he was quickly driven to the ground, his face smashed against the linoleum. The knife clattered harmlessly across the room. I sat slumped against the wall, clutching my throat. I felt warm liquid seeping through my fingers. The knife had cut me. It wasn't deep, but it bled heavily. "Emily!" Sarah rushed over, her face draining of color at the sight of the blood. "Doctor, quick!" The doctor quickly examined the wound, applying pressure and bandages. The guards had already radioed the police, keeping a knee firmly planted on Jason's back as he screamed obscenities. "Emily, I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna fucking kill you!" Jason roared until his voice cracked, his bloodshot eyes filled with absolute madness. "Even as a ghost, I'll haunt you." The police arrived in minutes. The lead detective took one look at the scene and scowled deeply. After a brief rundown from security, he slapped the cuffs on Jason. Armed home invasion? Well, hospital invasion? And attempted murder. Caught red-handed, the detective said coldly. You're going away for a long time, pal. As Jason was dragged out, he kept twisting his head to glare at me. The venom in his eyes was almost tangible. Miss Miller, we'll need you to come down to the precinct to give a full statement, an officer said to me. The patient is in shock and has a lacerated throat. Sarah stood protectively in front of me. Can we do it here? I'll cooperate, I said, my voice raspy. I knew this was the end. Attempted murder, stacked on top of aggravated domestic assault and terroristic threats. Jason was looking at decades behind bars. Halfway through my statement to the detectives, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Barbara and Richard had arrived. Barbara was in a wheelchair, pushed by Richard. She looked sallow, but her eyes were as vicious as ever. She wailed as she came down the hall. Let my son go! Let my son go! That bitch set him up! She drove him crazy. Richard, face streaked with tears, pleaded with the officers blocking their path. It's a misunderstanding, please. My son just came to see his wife. He was just stressed. He didn't mean it. When they saw me sitting in a wheelchair, a thick bandage around my neck, giving my statement, Barbara's wailing stopped abruptly. It was replaced by a torrent of curses. Emily, you cursed whore! You ruined my son! Give me my son back! Richard dropped to his knees right in front of the police, sobbing uncontrollably. Officers, please, have mercy. My son lost his mind for a second. It wasn't intentional. This woman. She drove him insane. Everything online is a lie she made up. The lead detective looked at them with utter disgust. Whether it's made up or not is for a jury to decide. Right now, the evidence is rock solid. Jason Miller broke in with a deadly weapon and attempted murder. If you two keep causing a disturbance and harassing the victim, I will arrest you both for obstruction of justice. Barbara opened her mouth to curse again, but Richard frantically covered her mouth. He looked up at me, his eyes full of desperate begging. Emily, Dad is begging you. For the 3 years you were married, please forgive Jason. He's still young. He can't go to prison. I'll give you everything you want. The house, the money. Just drop the charges. Tell the cops it was a misunderstanding, that he was drunk and didn't mean it. I looked at him quietly. The man who had coldly watched me writhe in agony with a broken leg was now kneeling on the floor, weeping pathetically. A misunderstanding? I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse from the throat injury. When he held a knife to my throat, it wasn't a misunderstanding. When he called me a toxic bitch and said he had to kill me to start his life over, it wasn't a misunderstanding. I paused, looking down at their pale, terrified faces, and forced out every word with absolute clarity. That night, when my leg was shattered, when I was lying on the kitchen floor dying of pain, you guys sat in the living room eating BBQ ribs, watching TV, and laughing. Did you ever, for one single second, think about forgiving me? Jason lost his job and people are mean to him, so you feel sorry for him. Who felt sorry for me? The agony I went through for 3 years, my shattered leg, almost dying tonight, the baby I lost. Who feels sorry for me? You want me to forgive him? Who is going to forgive me? My voice was quiet, but in the silent hallway, everyone heard it perfectly. Barbara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She slumped back in her wheelchair, her eyes going blank. Richard seemed to lose all the strength in his body, collapsing onto the floor, burying his face in his hands, and letting out a muffled, agonizing wail. The police escorted them off the premises. By the time I finished my statement, the sun was rising. Morning light spilled into the messy hospital room. Dr. Evans came to check my neck. The cut was superficial. No veins or nerves were damaged. But he insisted I needed rest and absolute safety. We are transferring you, Dr. Evans said, leaving no room for argument. To a private rehab facility outside the city, it's quieter, and the security is airtight. You aren't safe here anymore. This time, I didn't refuse. The transfer happened swiftly. I was moved to an upscale private rehab center in the suburbs. Private room, dedicated nurses, strict visitor protocols. My parents flew in from Boston the moment they heard. When my mother saw the bandage on my neck, she broke down crying on the spot. My dad gripped my hand tightly, his eyes red, but he didn't say a word. "Mom, I'm okay," I comforted them instead. "It's over now." Was it really over? I didn't know. My physical wounds would heal, the scar on my neck would fade, and my leg would slowly regain its strength. But the things shattered inside my soul might never be fully restored. A few days later, Attorney Hayes brought the latest updates. Jason was formally indicted on multiple felony charges: attempted murder in the second degree, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, and terroristic threats. Bail was denied. Barbara was charged with aggravated assault. Given her age and medical history, even if exaggerated, she was released on bond pending trial. Richard was facing charges as an accessory after the fact and for evidence tampering, hiding assets. Their defamation countersuit was thrown out of court by a furious judge, citing lack of evidence and the plaintiff's own pending felony indictments. Hayes also handed me a thick stack of documents. Based on the evidence you provided and the bank CCTV footage, the judge has issued a preliminary ruling that the Millers engaged in malicious dissipation of marital assets. In the upcoming divorce and civil suit, you hold all the cards. You will get the house, and the court will garnish whatever is left of their hidden funds to pay your restitution. He pulled out another folder. These are interview requests from national news networks, and a literary agent wants you to write a book about your experience. Decline all of them. I shook my head. I don't want to be consumed by the media anymore. This is where it ends. Hayes nodded. Probably for the best. Living a quiet, peaceful life is the best way to heal. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, I said sincerely. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it this far. You made it this far because you were strong enough to fight back, Hayes smiled. I just did my job. Another month passed. I was finally able to walk slowly with crutches. The scar on my neck was barely visible. My parents helped me move out of the rehab center and into a beautiful new apartment they had rented for me in a quiet, leafy suburb. It was small, but bathed in sunlight and warmly decorated. Outside the window, a large oak tree's leaves were turning golden in the autumn breeze. Life seemed to return to peace. I stopped checking the news. I changed my phone number and cut off all ties to the past. Occasionally, Hayes would call with updates. Jason's case was headed to trial, but his public defender was pushing for a plea deal of at least 10 years. Barbara and Richard were drowning in legal fees and impending trials. The divorce was finalized. The house was mine to sell, and the Millers were ordered to pay massive restitution. Everything was wrapped up. One late autumn evening, I took a slow walk around my new apartment complex with my crutches. The sunset painted the sky a warm orange. My new phone rang. An unknown Midwestern area code. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A long silence on the line, just heavy breathing. Then an old, incredibly hoarse voice. Emily. It's Richard. I didn't hang up, but I didn't speak. Jason took a plea deal. 7 years in a state penitentiary. His voice trembled. Barbara, she really had a stroke this time, not faking it. After we got back from the police station that night, she was so furious a vessel popped. She's completely paralyzed on her right side. She can barely speak. I remained silent. The bank foreclosed on the house. We have to be out in 2 days. We're moving back to my brother's trailer in Ohio. He began to sob. Emily, I'm sorry. The Miller family wronged you. Are you done? I finally spoke, my voice as calm as a placid lake. Muffled sobbing came through the phone. Richard, it was the first time I used his first name directly to him. Keep your apologies. Give them to your son, your wife, or whatever God you pray to. I don't need them. I know we don't deserve it. I just wanted to tell you that we're being punished. We really are. He wept openly. That's your business, I said. It has nothing to do with me anymore. I hung up. The sun dipped below the horizon. The last rays of light faded, and the sky turned a deep, bruised indigo. Streetlights flickered on, illuminating the path home. I looked up and took a deep breath. The air was a little chilly. Winter was coming in New England, but I knew that spring would invariably follow. The storm that broke me had, in the end, taught me how to fly again.